January 1st as a marker
Right.
for what's going on. And it works because it works like any other birth chart. You know, it's like if it was a baby born in the White House on January 1st. So I've been looking at that chart, and in astrology, we have a thing called minor progressions where we move the moon at the same rate of the sun. Naturally, the moon moves 13 times faster than the sun. Okay, so what we're really doing is slowing the chart down about 13 times and watching the motion of the planets as they unfold at that rate. And what really got me was it's hitting for everything. All right.
Right.
It hit specifically for when Trump sent or tried to send troops to LA to quell those demonstrations. The moon, the P4 moon, had moved from its initial place at a 26 degrees Capricorn and had moved all the way to the progressed position of Chiron and Aries. Chiron talks about failed attempts. It talks about inconveniences. And in Aries deals with the military. So what was failed was Trump's ability to get support from the military to quell the demonstrations and the anarchy that's going on in California. At the same time, Uranus by transit, it done made a move into Gemini in a perfect aspect or trine aspect, 120 degrees or 240 degrees from Pluto.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of astrologers, when they come into this craft, they get the idea that aspects are good and aspects are bad. And they associate this English terminology with the normal dictionary connotation of what is good and what is bad. And to make the long story short, that really can't be done. Good is a technical term that really points to the easiness of the capacity of these two planets to mingle. And bad means that there may be some tension between the forces involved. Okay? So, like fire and water is never good because water could put fire out. You understand? So, to think that you're going to get positive results for fire simply because of the temperature of the water is ridiculous. It's going to be the same every time. Water is going to put fire at a limitation. So this is what the aspects mean. It just means when they say good aspect, it doesn't necessarily mean good as in gain, as in something you would appreciate, as in something you would enjoy. It means good as in there's very little outside interference between the relationship that's going on between these two. So what to make it clearer for the folks, if a planet is so-called harm indicating planet is in good aspect to another harm indicating planet, then that's good for harm. You see what I'm saying? It's good that nothing is going to get in the way between these two energies blended. It has nothing to do with good as in something I desire or something bad. So when the trine to Pluto occurred from Uranus moving into Gemini, that put a great shift on a lot of alliances and nations because Uranus is the planet that points to alliances and to nations. And it even is happening before our eyes to the president and his ICE manager, Elon Trump. You see, they had a falling out. This had everything to do with the fact that Mars sits in the first place or the first house of Trump's chart. And there was a question amongst a study group that I'm engaging in with my students. And there was a question as to what Trump's real rising was, okay? And my wife, you know, she participates in these studies, right? She had already worked out his ascendant, and we had discussed it, but I failed to realize what that point was. So in the study group, someone had asked, they said, what rising is Elon Musk? You know? And I was like, I don't know. It appears to me, watching this confrontation between him and Trump, that he's a natural Leo, but he looks like a Virgo to me, right? And my wife, hearing this, screamed. She said, "Yo, he's a Leo in the country of his birth, and in this country, he is a Virgo, and this is why he looks like a Virgo to me, because I trained my ability to recognize human characteristics as signs of the zodiac here in this country." But anyway, so when I saw that they were at odds, I said to myself, if it's kicking off on a personal level for people at such a rate, then I know it's going to be special for societally speaking. And after the last few days since the minor progressed moon has moved over Aries, we've seen drastic acts of violence continually.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think I mentioned, I'm not sure, so y'all can go back and call me out if you want. But I think I mentioned crashes, catastrophes in concerning mobility or machines at the beginning of the year. And you see how these planes been dropping.
Yeah. Most recent Indian
so
one.
Even if it's a grand conspiracy, some people conspired to bring this about, and the chart is gonna relay and convey the reality of what happens, regardless whether we think that whether it naturally occurs or unnaturally occurs. Okay, there was an earthquake about 4 or 5 days ago here in Atlanta. Did you feel it?
I didn't feel it. I heard about it. I did hear about it.
Yeah, I didn't feel it. What happened in my residence and in my domain, in my neighborhood, was the lights went out. Okay, so but that happens when there's not an earthquake. So I didn't notice. I just saw the reports about the earthquake, they hit Atlanta, and I'm like, yeah, well, we can look to all kinds of unusual events to be popping off this year. There's something I really wanted to point to was when the United States was founded, the planet of Uranus was in Gemini. Okay. So what this means, Uranus, the seventh planet, the one that leans on its side. This planet is a planet of upheaval, of rebellion, and Aquarius is the sign of rebellion. All right. So, and it represents those things that bring rebellion about. It has everything to do with the collective masses of the people and the collective consciousness. It has everything to do with a nation or a group or groups and nations of people. All right. And looking away from it genophysically, pertaining to human beings, and we apply it societally to objects and things we see in the world, in our circumference, in our environment, right? It points to machinery, technology of every single sort, everything from a paperclip to the super drives that they use to convey the internet to folks globally, okay? It points to electricity that is conducted by man through wires, as well as through the magnetosphere in the form of lightning and what have you, in turbulent weather. So because this is a prominent year for that placement, the natal placement of Uranus in Gemini in the United States chart, we're going through what they call an Uranus return. And when planets return to their places, they're given more volume. Like in a band, when the guitar player or the bass player gets a solo, or the trumpet player gets a solo, any one of the musicians get a solo, the rest of the band continues to play. But they're not making the grandstand. They're not making the noise that the solo artist is making. And this is how planetary returns occur. So the United States is in a runner's return. What does that mean in plain English? That we're going to see upheaval, demonstrations, drastic social changes and societal norms take form in a manner that we have not expected nor have looked at for at least 84 years. Still there?
Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah.
Well, these are the things that I was looking for at the beginning of the year. What I had not expected were I hadn't even seen it coming, man. It was like just far beyond my furthest imagination. That they would be blowing up Tesla cars all over the place. And that was a precursor to the conflict between Elon Musk and Trump. So I came to the conclusion that Elon had to be a Leo rising because Trump has Mars in Leo. This year and every year after this one for the next 3 or 4 years, I would like to say 4 years, but I'm going to say 3 to keep myself safe. Okay. I already said 3 to 4 years. So the next 3 to 4 years, Trump is going to be very successful in his undertakings. Okay. If you look at his birth chart, which is 10:30 in the morning, everybody here that really does astrology, I hope you had your software up, because all you got to do is pull up June 14th, 1946 at 10:30 in the morning. Okay. Trump was born in Queens, New York, but because he is functioning now from the seat of the capital of this nation, you should put the chart in Washington, D.C. All right. And when you add 72 days to that, let me see what that is real quick, because I ain't got it in my head, right? When you add 72 days to it, to June the 14th, 1946, you'll find that the planet of Venus is conjunct the ascendant perfectly in the location of Washington, D.C. And what does this mean for him? Well, it means that all executive decisions and acting capacities that he makes that has to do with that territory are going to work out for him regardless of the challenges that immediately appear. Venus is the planet of victory and success. Give me a second here. When we're looking at a chart, let's say we're doing a horary chart, which is a question that a person poses to the astrologer, and the astrologer will pull up a chart for the very moment that the question was asked and use that chart to answer the question without regard or any consideration whatsoever for the person's birth chart. Okay. If a person is to ask an astrologer, like, what does Venus progress to the ascendant mean? This is a year of promise for any human being, wicked, righteous, evil, good, benevolent, bad, handsome, or ugly. You understand? This is every human being looks forward to motions like this. As Trump will never have Venus project to progress to his ascendant using Nibel's formula again in his life, it'll be another 30 years before he gets a cuspal motion like this. You see what I'm saying? So this is part and partially the reason why I announced that I thought he was going to win the election, and predicted the election, because like I said, Venus is promising. When a woman comes to me and says, when's the best year for me to have a baby? Or when's the best year for me to get married? Or when anyone asks, when is the best time for me to open a business? Or I'm going to the casino this month. I'm looking primarily for the Jupiter day and any midpoint between Jupiter and Venus, as well as the Venus planet. And more so Venus when it comes to money than Jupiter. Where Jupiter talks about good fortune and success in your undertaking, it doesn't necessarily have to manifest monetarily or materially, where Venus must, because Venus rules a material sign and a socially interaction. It governs all social interaction and gives us indication to the nature of all social interaction. And commerce happens to be one of those most engaged social interactions globally since the beginning of man's existence here. You see what I'm saying? So Venus, in other words, would be more indicative of material success. Let me get to what I was pulling up here first, okay?
All right. Shout out to everybody in the chat. We got Ahku going off. Show started out with a bang. The brother is doing his thing. Hey, Rod, so real quick, while you look for that, so do you think since you got Trump's chart, is he going to finish the term? Because I'm hearing people saying, "Oh, Trump ain't going to make it out of there alive."
He's going to finish the term. Yes, okay. Absolutely, yes.
All right.
And I'm basing this, this isn't just, I don't like Trump or dislike Trump. He has as much significance to me as a leaf blowing in the wind in Taiwan right now. Okay? So,
right now.
Yeah, right now. That's how concerned I am about him as a human being. I don't really care who they put in office. What I'm looking at, what I'm concerned about is how the society is going to unfold, and the pressures that we're going to be dealing with. We are going to go through economic upheaval. Canada just recently, in the last year or so, maybe more than a year, converted all their money to plastic. They no longer use paper money. Okay? Trump taking the step to initiate all paper checks done away with and handled electronically is going to open the door to all commerce being handled electronically. Eventually, they're going to get rid of paper money altogether. Now, I don't believe that people are going to stop using it. Just like when they withdrew the gold standard and changed the way money was. People still kept them gold certificates. People still kept them promissory notes because they're worth money today. So if he shuts down the use of paper money, that money loses its value in the immediate market, but in the collector's market blows up. So don't be throwing your dollars away. You dig what I'm saying? That paper is only worth a fucking nickel in real life. And once they take it out of circulation or no longer have it, after 10 and 15 years, the value of that increases exponentially. Old, no longer used, out of circulation money is now an antique. Okay? So these are things where it looks negative. But in the long run, it's the United States trying to keep up with the rest of the world. As it stands, okay, now, because we're talking about Uranus and Aquarius, and we are in the age of Aquarius, and we are in a time right now where Uranus gets to have a lot of noise. So a lot of age of Aquarius advancements are going to occur. I've been looking at AI, okay? Now, they're getting better rapidly, okay? It was only a year and a half ago that if you did some stuff like this on an AI photograph, it would bring it back to you. You only had 2 fingers. And if you made a video, the hands, it would give you 7 and 8 fingers and what have you, right? Well, now they're getting videos where it's getting really hard to tell whether it's AI or not. You see, these advancements are coming during a super sub Gemini age within the overall age of Aquarius, causing communication and all devices involved in any kind of communication. And that's more than communication between people. This is communication between machines. This came about and was highlighted during this phase. This Gemini phase, micro age that I'm referencing, is going to be 15 years long. Trump is necessary to put in office for some reason. I haven't worked that reason out. I know that it's either for war and to condition the people to desire a softer character and perhaps maybe a woman. You see, his presidency will make the American public good and fresh and ready for a woman when he's done. You see what I'm saying? Because he's coming in with this iron hand shit, trying to restore America to a state that it was, the United States, pardon me, to a state that it was in back in the 80s and 90s, really. This is what I see. And where his ideas may be good for money on a corporate level, I don't know how that works for the common man, because AI is already beginning to push people out of certain jobs. People in tech are moving from cybersecurity to AI at drastic rates. You understand? Where cybersecurity was the biggest shit, now it's AI overnight. You said you had some questions for me, Lord.
Yeah. I was letting you do your thing. Tell me about, since we're talking so much about the United States, and I said I want to touch on some current events. What can you tell me, Rod, with Africa starting to wake up, Rod? We got some motion happening over there. What can you tell me?
About Burkina Faso.
What's happening in the stars with the mighty continent of Africa, man? They waking up.
Well, indeed. And, you used the right phrase, all right? All the signs of the zodiac point to different mind states. Aries points to you in your war state, your frustrated, your angry state. Cancer points to you in your emotional state. Leo points to you in a composed state, right? So when we think about the ages, we're in the age of Aquarius, which is the age of rebellion. I mentioned this earlier in this very broadcast. It represents rebellion and social upheaval, okay? Now, and because it pertains to groups of people and it pertains to freedom, liberty, and human rights and humanitarianism and things of this nature, during the age of Aquarius, during the sub-age of Libra, and the micro-age of Gemini, people are going to start to speak out about how they're being governed and what is fair and what is not fair. Okay? The great shift in the law occurred. See, I ain't trying to make this nigga seem prophetic, because it ain't the character, it's the timing, right? It's the times for that. When Trump gets into office, that is Pluto in Aquarius in opposition to Leo. Okay? I said this a couple of years ago when it first peeked his head in Aquarius and came back out, or when it was on its way into Aquarius. I said, Pluto opposing Leo itself is like the sun in Scorpio, or Pluto opposing the sun, or the sun in Aquarius with Pluto is going to really bring it to the fore a lot. But Pluto in Aquarius opposing Leo has a lot to do with the way we're raising our children. And I was like, because also Aquarius is the sign of the unconventional, the socially unacceptable, and the transfer, the process of things moving from socially unacceptable to socially acceptable, and or those things that are socially acceptable becoming socially acceptable. That whole idea of social acceptability, whether accepted or not, has to do with Aquarius. So because Pluto deals with sexuality, the first thing I said was, we're going to see a lot of these people growing sick and tired of the LGBTQ agenda and how it's taking such less. There's going to be mad pushback when Pluto gets into Aquarius. And I said to my wife, I said, because it opposes Leo, this has to do with children. So a lot of child abuse, a lot of child molestation issues, and the way we socially engage our children and raise and treat our children is going to come to the fore, like seriously. And maybe not in a positive light. And what do we see now? Parents killing their kids like it ain't nothing. Perverts getting caught for child molestation, child porn. All this stuff is like really heightening. And in my mind, it's like the band in the background playing. That shit always goes on. There's always some child abuse, some neglect and mistreatment and murder of children, and infanticide and things of this nature, right? Infanticide. And I said, but it doesn't get attention like it's gonna get attention while the planets are in the signs that point to these things. And that's the real issue. Africa has been oppressed since the Punic Wars. The Europeans and Asian minor countries have infiltrated the culture and have been oppressing and imposing their policies and customs and ways on the people of the continent of Africa. And it is, Africa reached its peak during the age of Leo. I mean, it was at a super peak, where they was building pyramids. Leo was like from 11,507 BC to 9,000 BC and such, right? So this is where all the pyramids were built globally and stuff like that. So that culture flourished back then. Okay, in the age of Aquarius, it was a sun culture. They revered the sun. They used sun symbolism, and for kingship, they used the cosmic model for the hierarchy of their government. Okay, this all came about during the age of Leo, and thus it was peaking. It was global. It was a world order. Well, the world order, after 12,960 years, has flipped on itself 180 degrees. And we have the sign that the sun rules is setting in this concept. And the sign that the rule is monsters and technology and man-made things. And the unusual and unconventional and socially unacceptable is rising. And so what happens as this has been occurring, really, the age of Aquarius since the 1453, since the 15th century. Okay, we've been in the age of Aquarius. They've been trying to destroy the culture of the sun people at an exponential rate, exponentially. Okay, so and for people that want to believe that racism is going away, it has never not been here. Okay, and it's never going anywhere. We're never gonna have peace on earth and goodwill. We're all gonna be sitting at a fucking Thanksgiving table like Charlie Brown, because you're gonna have the nigga on the other side of the table. You dig? This is our planet. And every country has been infiltrated by mutants. I mean, people don't like to hear that terminology. Okay? But everybody knows that the most original people on this planet all look like those brothers that are on the Andaman Islands. And this was so no matter where you went on the planet. It was a black planet. And because of the inclination of the poles, nothing that wasn't black could live on it. So when people talk about, man, we from Africa, we from Australia, we from Asia, we from America, 100,000 years ago, if we had a picture of the globe or the map, you wouldn't even be able to recognize North America. You wouldn't be able to recognize Africa. See, we can't say where we from because there was land where there's now the Indian Ocean. And there is now land where there was an ocean in Salt Lake, with Salt Lake in Nevada or Utah, wherever Salt Lake City is, right? Nevada, here in the United States. Is it Salt Lake City, Utah, or Colorado, or Nevada? I don't know. It's in the mountains.
Utah.
Okay, yeah. So it's out west, right? That was an ocean, an inland sea or ocean at one time. So whatever is living on the plains in America now and in the mountains wasn't living there then, because all that shit was underwater. So when we talk about and we want to argue and take pride about where we from this planet as far as we know. Okay? And we got, how can you say this? Oral tradition and say we came from the sky. We got oral tradition and say we came straight out the water. We got oral tradition and said we came out from underneath the earth and started living on the surface. I believe all the above is true to some extent. Okay? I believe all that. I accept all that as a possible absolutivity. All right. The point in the matter is, man is evolving. Proof of the matter is that as the sun's sign in the great age clock sets, so does the culture of the sun people set. Okay, I don't like that, but that's really what it is. You know, somebody said, man, you know, them Europeans came to America and they just decimated everybody over here with disease, and it was genocide, and they're trying to hide that, and they don't want us to. And I'm like, you know, the Most High has a way of making his plan, the zodiac, unfold. You know, no matter where you look, when a thing is worn out, it is wiped out. So we, I'm calling my ancestors worn out. No, I'm calling the ways of the world order that they were living by was worn out. It was inevitable. America had not just gotten invaded by Europeans. 200 or 300 years before the Europeans got here, the Asiatics, the Siberians ran up in here on the Mound people. Okay, so there were all kinds of incursions happening and invasions happening all over because it was time for us to step out of that culture. It is the same right now for those people that refuse to adapt to the computer age. Nigga, pretty soon ain't gonna be no TV shows for you to turn on. Just like cassette tape. When cassette tapes came out, we were all using 8-track. Niggas wanted to hold on to that 8-track to the pool. My uncle still has his right now. We can go in his attic and find that shit. You see what I'm saying? So people don't want to let go of these old trends. But he, as much as he loves those 8-track, cannot find a single 8-track player in nary a pawn shop anywhere in the country, right? So this is how the collective consciousness of humanity moves forward. A lot of the things that we come up with that are actually useful remain throughout the ages. For example, meditation is a Gemini act. Yoga is a Sagittarian act. Well, during the age of Gemini, when Sagittarius was setting and Gemini was rising in the age conceptualization, mental development and contorting the body came together as a means by which to facilitate some form of enlightenment. Okay? Now, that was developed 7,000, 9,000 BC or before. Okay? Or before then. And it just was written down or was canonized into a solid practice in the culture that we have received it from. Either way it goes, it appears to be Gemini Sagittarian. Well, the age of Gemini is fucking over, Joe. It's been over for like the last 8,000, 7,000 years or so, more than that, 11,000 years or so, right? So when you understand that, we still use writing. Writing came to us in the age of Gemini. We still domesticate animals and teach them to respond to verbal command like we did in the age of Gemini. See, that'll never go away because this is an ultimate useful property, okay? But those things about the age of Gemini that were useless have been wiped out, and there is no remnant of it. So when we look at today, and we're like, oh man, look at how technology is overtaking the culture of every people globally. Man, they getting ready to bring the internet to the Amazon. To motherfuckers that ain't never seen a fucking computer. They gonna see the internet for the first time. You see, they getting ready to primitivate. I'm making words up as I go. They bring these people out of their old world state into the new world, to the modern world, okay? This is an inevitability, and this year happens to highlight or put some focus on that observation, on that, on the fact that we are constantly evolving and now in a technological age, taking off and doing away with the old world order. This is why the Europeans were able to come and bring disease. Okay, in the age of Pisces, when Europe and Asia dealt with disease, America was blessed. We didn't have to deal with that. We dealt with the cultivation of drugs like ayahuasca and marijuana, heroin, cocaine. We dealt with these things while the whole world was over there killing each other. We took some of that over there, okay? We developed pharmaceutical science over here. We developed architectural science. So, but what we had not developed was the idea that the Most High didn't drink blood. You see? These people were still performing human sacrifice, practicing the religion of Moloch, really, that you hear about in the Bible. It's the same thing, just a different form here in America, giving babies to the gods, thinking that the baby would that the gods would appreciate the granting of that life as a sacrifice and allow the people to live on, right? Well, this type of thinking was not going to continue to flourish at the rate of the rest of the world was flowing and going. Christianity and Islam, Buddhism, and humanitarian concepts that far exceeded the humanitarianism cultivated here in this culture allowed us to get wiped out. So it is the same in smaller scale. It is identical in smaller scale. So, technology is going to take over the economic situation pretty soon. I ain't even got to be in 10 years. All right, that we all gonna have our money on a card. Okay, all your shit is on a card like a credit card. All right, because it's more efficient. They're already doing it in some countries, so it's just bound to overcome. It's bound to happen. Big metropolises such as America are difficult. We're gonna run into a lot more public demonstration, aka riots and rebellion, because the course of the country is going to go through drastic change during his term and the next term. I don't know what got y'all thinking that Trump is some serious villain. They're all villains. And they all continue each other's policies to some extent, even when they compete with each other.
Right.
Yeah, because if I put a legacy in place, just because I lose the election, that what I put in place is still rolling. And the next nigga has to manage that efficiently. He can't just come and say, okay, we're no longer paying attention to that. So if you look now to where everybody think it's a joke. the war in Israel right now, that they're waging on the Palestinians has spread to Iran. Iran and Israel, as we speak, are exchanging all kinds of fireplay, killing each other like hell, okay? This is the excuse that the United States has been looking for since whose administration, right? Since the last 5 or 6 administrations, to go over there in Iran and really democratize the place. Because that's what they're also doing in the age of Aquarius in the Libra Brother Shaman. It used to be we would conquer the United States. The United States would conquer a country or infiltrate, coup d'etat the country, and they would put a dictator in there. Or they would install a new king like they did in Saudi Arabia back in the day, right? So now they wipe out whatever kind of government you got and enforce a democratic voting system type of government. They've been wanting to do this in every Muslim country since the Crusades. See, and when people fail to realize too, these conflicts, these modern day conflicts that we see and engage in and see engaged in constantly on the internet and on TV and all that shit goes back to the Punic War. Okay? When the Italians and the Greeks, the Dorians and the people that came in and usurped the Etruscans came to power, the Latins, okay? They wanted prevalence in the world too. And they wanted prevalence over the Mediterranean. This is what started the black-white wars in America. I mean, in the world, okay? Punic War was European against African. That's where, and the animosity started way before then. But the clash rose, and finally cemented itself during the Punic War. So if you understand that, you want to understand how racism is and why it is. It has everything to do with the control of territory. Okay? Everything. Because even within the bounds of Africa itself, where people are at conflict with another, because some of these people are from India and Asia. You see? What was I going to say? Variability creates diversity. Diversity creates separation. Separation creates animosity and hostility. And this is the nature of humanity. And what people really don't think, like, they want this world to be as peaceful as the spiritual realm is after you're dead. Good luck with that. We came down here for diversity. We came down here for the extremes of good and bad, hot and cold, wet and dry, soft and warm, cold and wet and such and such. Because there is no material existence without those extremes. And no sailor develops these skills. No soul is going to evolve to develop its divinity without dealing with the challenges of the material world, because there ain't no pussy in heaven, man. Ain't no war in heaven. Ain't no conflict. Ain't nothing. Okay? Everything we get down here. Okay? So, and we can't wait to get here. Because look at us. We coming in by the millions every year. By hundreds of thousands a day. So it's obvious that this is the place to be to me. Okay? Pardon the sensibilities of everyone else who may not agree. This is just where my mind is. So when I look at the astrology, I see a constant spiraling pattern going on. And each loop of that spiral is called a volute, right? Each volute is composed of the same 12 energies. It's just done at a different place and time. So we can see this pattern repeating over and over and over again. I hope I conveyed that.
No, definitely. Yeah, definitely conveyed that excellently, my brother. Let me ask you a quick question. People compare when they see what's going on now. A lot of people say, "Oh man, this is the end of an era. This is the end of the current world as we know it." They use words like the global reset. The Earth there's gonna be a new Earth. They use new terms. I want to ask you, what was going on in the cosmos the last time when we had a great flood that devastated the planet? I think they said it was 11,000 years ago. What was popping? Yeah,
there's more than one flood, guys.
Well, that was the most recent one. They said 11,000 years ago.
Well, the one you're talking about is the flood in 9,600 BC, which is 11,000, 12,000 years ago, as a result of the Younger Dryas.
Yeah.
That was supposedly the flood that raised sea levels globally. But there are floods that occurred. The Gulf of Mexico was a deep green valley at one time, according to the Mesoamericans. And that was the flood that people want to say is Noah's flood, in my opinion. Okay? The flooding of, but what about the Mediterranean? It was not always water. And what about the Red Sea? It was not always a sea. You understand? It was a river at one time. It is now a fucking sea. So when you talk about the flood narrative, this is a multi-era, like it happened over the course of like 2,000 or 3,000 years in different spots everywhere continually. So while the water levels were rising. So when we talk about the flood, you have to be more specific to the location. But the grand flood that occurred at the end of the Younger Dryas was being touted the most as the flood. So I will assume that that's the one you're referencing. And so what were you going to ask me about that?
What was going on at that time period? I want to compare it to what's going on now and see if there's any alignments going on.
Okay. The beginning of the Ice Age started like in the age of Virgo, or even before then it started getting colder. Because this is a product of the poles of the earth tilted. So we don't have history before 5,000 BC, thanks to the Roman Catholic Church and biodegradable material. All right. We don't have a record other than the geologic record to say what was going on. And we have the oral traditions of